I'm on the content team here at Shmoop. And the content team, the folks who put together the hundreds of thousands of pages of content we have on site. I came to Shmoop from academia because I was tired of all the stuffiness and stodginess surrounding learning. And we have none of that at Shmoop. So I'm going to start by talking about the Shmoop trademark humor. I first want to start just by throwing a stat at you. If you can't hear, I'm going to speak a little louder since I'm not on the mic. If you can't hear me, let me know. 87% of students love Shmoop because we're funny. We did not make that up. We actually did a survey. And when I say that we're funny, I'm not just talking about one-liners, although as you saw with Dave, we have plenty of those to go around. We make learning fun and accessible for students so that, oh, thank you. So that every subject is easy for students to understand without us talking down to them. Our motto is "We Speak Student," and that means a few things. It means that we know all about students' references and current events. I personally have seen more teen soaps than I would like to admit, and our entire content team has read more young adult dystopian literature than probably the people who wrote it, and there is a lot of young adult dystopian literature out there. Thank you. We use these pop culture references to draw students in and help them relate to the material. And then the last thing we do is avoid those $5 words, the big words that nobody understands. We used most of those up while we were writing our dissertations anyway. And our goal for 2014 is to make sure that everyone can understand Shmoop. We're developing resources in special education, in STEM, foreign languages, and one of the groups that we're targeting especially is English language learners. We know that our Shmoopy language can be a little tough for non-native speakers to understand. So we're developing a product that helps explain to them why's this funny, or WTF. This product is going to translate our humor for students so that they can understand our material better, but also understand humor more generally. Every time they hover over an inevitably hilarious joke, there will be a clear-cut explanation of what it means and why they should be laughing. It's kind of like pop-up video from the early 2000s on VH1, but with a little less Madonna. Speaking of English that's hard to understand, I'm going to talk a little bit about Shakespeare. We are increasing our already huge Shakespeare collection that's on site by adding a section just on Shakespeare quotes. Because as it turns out, most of what we say today, Shakespeare said first. Take a look and I'll read this little ditty for you. The short and long of it is that Shakespeare is a piece of work. His writing might be Greek to you, but send those fears packing because as luck would have it, Shmoop can get you out of that pickle. In our heart of hearts, we know that all's well that ends well, even if it feels like a wild goose chase along the way. Don't be the laughingstock of this brave new world. Lie low with Shmoop, and in one fell swoop, we'll pry you from the jaws of death by Shakespeare. And remember, all that glitters is not gold, but that's neither here nor there. Those are also Shakespeare quotes. So this product is going to walk students through the origin of the quote, how it evolved over time, and most importantly, why they should care. This question, why should I care, is a question we ask all across the content at Shmoop. The goal is to get students to engage with the material, and not just Shakespeare. On Shmoop, Apollo has a Facebook page. We compare Mark Twain to Jon Stewart. And the Jonas Brothers, may they rest in peace, make an appearance when we talk about isosceles triangles. We've made our mark with the learning guides that Dave mentioned. Right now we have everything from literature to mythology, math, science, all across the board. But the next step on our path to total world domination is our online courses. Like our learning guides, they're filled with humor, accessibility, and a huge breadth of content. But our online courses are completely interactive and Common Core aligned. Hold your applause. We like to say that learning is global and teaching is local. As Dave mentioned, we are not here to replace teachers. We are here to help and supplement teachers. So we do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then the teachers are there in the classroom to take it home. We have a whole boatload of courses and more ways to put them together than even Shakespeare could have come up with. So if you're the kind of person who goes over to Cantor's Deli here in LA and orders straight from the menu the number 7 Sablon rye with all the fixins, you're gonna like our pre-made courses. We have everything from a 36-week course on algebra, which is super fun, an 18-week elective on dystopian literature, and then shorter classes, like a 1-week crash course on digital literacy. We have almost 100 courses at this point that are all pre-made for you. But if you're the kind of person, like my Jewish grandmother, who goes into the deli and orders completely off menu, we also have our courses broken up into units. So you can cobble together our material to create your dream course. Let's say you want to teach the Huck Finn unit of American literature, followed by the unit on Jim Crow from US history. That's awesome. We love interdisciplinarity, and we encourage that. Or maybe you want to string together our courses on how to write a resume, how to write a cover letter, and how to nail the interview for your students who are going on the job market. Great. Or you could have a class full of pre-algebra students who are nailing everything except the basics of geometry and multi-step equations. You can handpick those 2 units for your students. In just a minute, Jen's going to be coming up and talking about the assessments that we're developing to help assess your students' strengths and weaknesses so you know exactly which units you should be choosing for your students. As I said, we already have about 100 courses, all Common Core aligned, with readings, activities, quizzes, answer explanations, and we are looking at over 100 more in the coming year. So before I finish, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite products on site, our Essay Lab, which recently got a makeover. So any of you who are already familiar with the product are going to want to check it out again, thanks to Greg, who will also be up here. It now looks very pretty. When I was teaching, one of the most frustrating things for me was when students knew the content so well and just could not get it down onto paper. They had all the content there, but they couldn't write that essay to make it count. So our Essay Lab will help your students write basically any type of essay they're looking for. We have a literature essay lab, which actually pulls quotes and study questions from our learning guides to help them write a shiny new essay for you. We have a college application essay lab for your juniors and seniors, which will walk them through the college application process, the common apps, and answer a lot of questions they might have about that. And then we have our catch-all 5-paragraph essay lab, which includes all different types of essays: argumentative, persuasive, compare and contrast, research. I could go on, but you know all of them. And it walks you through every single step from brainstorming to proofreading with examples and tips all along the way. So I'm just going to quickly show you a little screenshot from our essay lab. This is the brainstorm section. When your student comes to this section, they're going to see a brainstorm prompt. We're trying to get them to think as much as possible about their topic before they start working on it. We say in Silicon Valley, you've got to fail fast, so let them get all their bad ideas out first. Then they're going to click New Brainstormer, and you're going to get dozens of different prompts for them to work on. They're going to write their answer in that little white box below, click Done, and it's going to save it for them. Each of our sections also has a little tips tab. You can see that little orange tab up there. And that guides them through tips for every single section of writing. So in our thesis section, we have tips on how to formulate a thesis, which is basically the hardest thing to do when writing an essay. We actually show examples of thesis statements from science, literature, history, and walk them through how we got there. So students are going to fill in all the information. They'll go through the thesis, the introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, and then we always have them polish and proofread, not just spell check, but proofread. And then at the end, they can print or download their essay and hand it in to you as teachers. So that brings us to our next speaker, who knows everything there is to know about everyone's favorite essay, the DBQ. And she's the one who chats with the College Board to discuss all things AP and SAT. She has her BA and MA in English Lit from Stanford University and worked as a full-time SAT tutor before coming to Shmoop. It's Jennifer Liu, the head editor of Test Prep.
So that's me. All right, thanks, Deb. So I'm here to give an overview of Shmoop Test Prep, but first I'll start with the obvious, which is that standardized testing is absolutely the best way to assess student progress, measure teacher performance, and spend a lovely Saturday morning or May afternoon. Said nobody, ever. Okay, so we know that you all have things you'd rather do than teach, administer, or pilot yet another standardized test, including reading the complete works of Shakespeare, or maybe just cribbing them from Shakespeare quotes, or, I don't know, teaching your hamster how to do a triple axel or something. Important life things. We get it. At Shmoop, we've probably taken more than our fair share of standardized tests over the years, so we know exactly how high the stakes are when it comes to test scores. Even those of us who brag about being good testers, whatever that really means, know exactly how quickly things can go south as soon as you step foot into a testing center. So testing is here to stay, but so is Shmoop Test Prep. At the end of the day, we have two goals. The first is to make sure that educators and parents have comprehensive, rigorous, and moderately comedic resources to help students get the scores they need or want. The second is to prepare students to walk into a testing center feeling like they could take over the world, not spend precious minutes wondering if they're actually experiencing the symptoms of an early onset heart attack. We make these mistakes so you don't have to. And if, along the way, a student realizes that he's actually super interested in the study of medieval land grants in Europe, or really enjoys programming Java all day, we're going to consider that a win. We're not mad about that at all. But don't just take our word for it. You love us. For a good reason, which I'll explain right now because we never pass up an opportunity to brag. When we first introduced Shmoop Test Prep in 2010, one of the biggest hurdles we had was proving the efficacy of our products. Over the last 4 years, however, we have seen incredible, fantastic, quantifiable results. So we'll actually be going over these later in the best practices panel at 2:30, where you can ask our teachers and administrators how they made Shmoop work for them. But for now, indulge me. So, Indio High School, in Indio, California, once named to the list of persistently lowest achieving schools by the California Department of Education, Indio High School has raised average SAT scores by a whopping 119.6 points over 2 years, which is a lot of points. They also now have 6 times the original number of AP students. Meanwhile, on the other coast, Northeast High School in Philadelphia tripled their college-eligible AP scores, so passing AP scores, after implementing Shmoop. So we have come a long way, and we could not be prouder to be part of these journeys. But in a nutshell, you know that you can help your students use Shmoop, get real results, and actually like doing it. Educators are sneaky that way, and we admire that about you. But back to us for a second. For one thing, how can anybody resist the breadth of Shmoop? So here we have college entrance exams. So SAT, PSAT, ACT, Explore and Plan, all of the AP exams, including Studio Art, and most of the SAT subject exams. As far as high school exams go, exit exams go, we have you covered too. We have them for California, so yes, that includes Casey or Cassie, whichever way you want to say that, Florida, and Texas. Or, in other words, all of the states that have a chance of floating away and becoming their own independent nations, which is totally just a coincidence. But Shmoop isn't just really ridiculously comprehensive. As it turns out, we're great listeners too. So if you have comments, suggestions, opinions, compliments, we are totally a river to our people, and we check emails so often it's probably kind of unhealthy. So over the last 4 years, we've built out our review topic drills and exams with even more bells and whistles. First of all, we have diagnostics. So those are short exams that cover as much breadth as possible. They are designed to identify pain points and guide students in the direction of targeted review. So I want to note here that we take very seriously our mission to prepare students for the tests that they need to take. Our exams look and feel the way that they should. The humor comes into play when we come to answer explanations and in our review topics. As far as answer explanations go, we've introduced video explanations for ACT and SAT drill questions with more guides to come. We are obviously huge fans of reading here at Shmoop, but sometimes you just kind of want to watch a cartoon. We have these. We've also revamped our vocabulary flashcards for all those times you need to look up really specialized definitions of words like imbroglio, or in really special circumstances, the word carp. We have got you covered. And if you can't find the word that you're looking for, our flashcards now have the capability so that you can enter your own vocabulary words. Piranha. Anyway, let's take a quick look at the nuts and bolts of one of our guides. So here we have the SAT dashboard. All of our test prep guides include the basic elements of review topics, drills, and practice exams. So you can see those across the top there in the navigation bar. Depending on the guide, we also include flashcards and MathJack, which David's going to talk about in a couple of minutes. We also include lists of everything students need to do to navigate our guide and prepare for the exam. For example, noting down your test date might seem a little bit basic, but there are students who don't, and you don't want to be the person who shows up on to the testing center on a Sunday. We'll also go through the nitty-gritty of a test prep guide at our garage demo later on, and definitely feel free to pull any of us aside for a demo or an explanation of what's happening here. So, some of you might have noticed that this guide is for the SAT, and we are totally aware that the test will be revamped eventually in 2016. We are on top of it. We know that it's really important to make sure that our test prep materials are up to date. As noted education expert Ferris Bueller once said, testing moves pretty quickly. If you don't stop and make a list of all the upcoming changes once in a while, you could miss them. So, with that in mind, some of the AP courses we've recently updated to incorporate College Board changes include AP Spanish Language and Culture, EAP Spanish Literature and Culture, AP Art History, even though, yes, it's going to be changing again, AP Biology, AP Chemistry, and AP Physics is in the works. So this year, for our annual Back to School launch, we're also going to update APUSH, or AP US History, to make sure that students have the resources they need to prepare for the new test in 2015. Meanwhile, we also realize that the words Common Core can make even the most seasoned teachers and administrators run screaming for the hills, or at least very seriously consider it. So we're rolling out resources for educators and students alike. We currently have teacher resources that explain the Common Core standards in plain language, so none of those $5 words, and provide examples of what these standards will look like in action. Our upcoming assessments project will also be based on the Smarter Balanced assessments, and they'll feature easy-to-use test banks. So we'll be starting with 8th grade ELA in math, and then later move on to incorporate 11th grade ELA in math as well. We're also working on augmenting our traditional multiple choice question formats with technology-enhanced items. So these include things like drag and drop, hotspot, and the ability to select multiple answer choices. So in other words, the future really is here. It's kind of freaky, but we're mostly excited about it. So I'm going to close with a little bit more not so humble bragging about some of our results. According to a survey that was conducted by Shmoop, 95% of Shmoop SAT users felt prepared for the test. A full 100% of Shmoop SAT users would prep with us again. Hopefully not for the same test, but we'll take it. In other words, a majority of users preferred Shmoop to any other test prep product out there. And you don't even need to review with our AP Stats guide to know that those are pretty good numbers. So the bottom line is that we are all about improving the testing experience for our users, whether it's staying on top of trends and developments in testing and education, or innovating at Shmoop Intergalactic Headquarters in Mountain View, which, by the way, would literally be impossible without our product and engineering teams. So, speaking of which, our next speaker is David Nguyen, our Chief Technology Officer. He's got a BS and MS in computer science from Northwestern University. In fact, he's actually ABD, mostly due to a slightly inconvenient love of snowboarding. He and his team keep Shmoop up and running, and he'll talk about some of the exciting developments that we have next.
Okay. Hi, how's everyone doing? So thank you, Jen, for introducing me, and she's right. If it wasn't for one snowboarding adventure, I might have a PhD. But why don't I have one? Why didn't I have an engineering PhD? It's actually because I love teaching, and that's actually why I wanted to get a PhD in the first place. But in engineering, getting a PhD, I would have ended up having an impact on about 300 students a year. But all my favorite teachers and the most impactful teachers I've ever had were in high school, and which is a lot of you guys here. And a lot of lessons I have in my life that I still use today for high school teachers. So I'm really, technology is a hobby of mine. I've always loved it. But teaching and the love of learning is the most important thing. So being here is actually quite fun for me. So I get to work on the things I like to do for the things that I care about. So with that in mind, I'd like to cover 4 trends in technology. And don't worry, I don't want it to be scary to you in any way, because as VP Zimmer addressed and Dave addressed, the most important things are hunger, the hunger gap, my life. I actually came here, my parents came here as immigrants from the Vietnam War. So I grew up actually going around the neighborhood picking up soda pop cans and crushing them with my grandpa, and he would always take us to, we'd always make money with the cans, and we'd go get ice cream cones, and it was actually a lot of fun for me, and so I never really thought about those things. And so, but my dad actually always talked about education, and that's near and dear to my heart. So I actually thank Dave and Ellen very much for giving me a chance to work here. So with that in mind, that's how we actually approach technology. It's like, technology is great, but unless it has to matter to you and it has to help you, otherwise that's not really the point. So these are the 4 things I want to talk about. Responsive design, big data, adaptive learning, and gamification. So the first is responsive design. So as a framework for all these terms, I'm going to define the term. I want to talk about how we approach it and how it matters to you. So responsive web design is a web design approach aimed at crafting sites to provide an optimal viewing experience, easy reading and navigation, with the minimum of resizing, panning, scrolling across a wide range of devices, from mobile phones to desktop computers. So if you look here, you'll see a computer, a tablet, and a phone. And we have one website, and barring a revolt from my engineers, we program in one way for all 3 platforms. At the end of the day, it's just really, we need to make sure the site is there for you wherever you are, which leads to how we really think about it and how it matters to you. So this is a scene of administrators and teachers at happy hour, and you're there, and the one thing that doesn't belong there is that big laptop, because you guys are actually, instead of enjoying your happy hour, you're worried about your students and their tests they have to take tomorrow, and you have to pull out your laptop to talk about Shmoop and talk about your students and see what they're doing. But with responsive design, you can just bring your phone. So here's just a couple examples of responsive design. So this is the home page. On the left is, or on my left is the home page on a bigger screen, and then it's adapted for a smaller screen. Another example of this is in our Shmoops that Deb so eloquently described. You have a left nav and a right nav for all the main content. That's where all the humanity is and all that. But for the students, they're on the way to school, they need to study, they got to cram for a test, they can pull out their phone and not have to pull out a laptop. They may not even have one, but the numbers show in when we take a look at numbers, is a lot of students are using phones over the last couple of years. We've just seen it more and more. So that's how we want to apply it to you guys. The next term I want to bring is big data. So big data, I was struggling to find a picture for big data, so I just came with the matrix. I think everyone knows what that is. But then there's this big elephant here, and what's he doing there? And I get asked questions, what are we doing about big data? And even for me, it seems like the big elephant in the room. So the one big part of big data is where does the data come from? So if you're familiar with our products, everything the students do, we actually track that information. So across SAT, ACT, every AP, and all the SAT subject tests, and I think Jen did a great job explaining the breadth of Shmoop. We take all that information, we compile it, we pass it through our little elephant, and he's affectionately called Hadoop, and he's the little mascot of big data up in Silicon Valley. We take that, we process it, and we extract insight from that and pass that back to you guys from an administrator level, principal level, teacher level, and student level. So on a more serious note, though, with data, we recognize that's a very sensitive issue, and it's all protected, it's all safe, and it's all secure. And so here's the first pass of one of the products we have where we actually use big data for you. So I've heard from you guys over the last year, like, you know, I get input from the sales team, the teachers, and all the people talk to me. There are certain data points that you want to know that you wouldn't be able to get readily on your own. So some of those data points are time on site, the number of active students, number of sessions, drills taken, practice exams taken, the active teacher sessions, so on and so forth. And I hope over the next 2 days you give me a lot more data points to look for with Hadoop. So from an administrator level, we do encourage you to always go visit all your schools, but if you don't have time or you're at happy hour, you can always go on Shmoop on your responsibly designed phone and look at every school and see how well they're doing, or if they're not using Shmoop at all, or if they are. And we just give you another avenue to get to that information. And there's like breakdowns and where people are spending their time on the site. So whatever's important to you, we pass that information back to you. Teachers, we didn't forget you. So on this slide is, I think if some of you are familiar with it, is the Gradebook. And that little quilt at the bottom of the screen is actually a visual representation of how well your class is doing. Yellow is kind of warning lights, and green means they're doing very well in certain skill areas. And none of that would be available without the use of big data. And so if it's useful to you, then that's when technology becomes important. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter. So for students, there's a big question mark here, and it's not a product. So like I said before, we capture data from students, and one of the ways we do that is through test prep. But this will lead me to some of the other products that we have where we use to get more data. So the next topic I'm going to cover is adaptive learning. So adaptive learning can be as complicated as my PhD thesis on the right here, or it could be as simple and as easy to digest as a little game board on the right. So I'm going to cover that. So adaptive learning, by definition, is a way in which computers or machines take into account how students are doing and give them feedback. And so we recognize teachers' time is very precious. We want to save as much time as we can for you so you can use it having to give lessons in life like my high school teachers gave me. And so that's why we care about using adaptive learning. So one of the products that we use with adaptive learning is called Math Shack. So I don't know if you guys have used it, but Math Shack is basically a program that covers the entire math high school curriculum, and we break it down into really simple standards. We have students can go through and master standards. We force them to master standards. The adaptive learning algorithm will actually, one, generate an infinite set of problems for them so they can work on their own, or it will measure their mastery. And as they master standards, they move on to more and more standards. And we're actually working right now to aligning it completely with the Common Core. And so that's one place in which we use adaptive learning for your students. And actually, all the while, they're actually using this they're studying for the SAT and the ACT and the KC at the same time. So we're really trying to hit on a lot of cylinders all at once. So this is our first foray into our Shack products where we apply adaptive learning. And I do encourage you to come find me after this throughout the day to come up with more ways and more pain points that you have that we can address so you can help me help you. So that's really important to us, and for all of us, just really help me and help you, okay? So there's that. So this leads to our last buzzword is gamification. Gamification, by definition, again, is the use of game thinking and game mechanics in non-game context to engage users in solving problems. So some of the elements we have on this site are quizzes with funny animations, with Pac-Man getting punished for getting a question wrong. We have Schmoins for virtual currency. We have leaderboards, because competition is not always a bad thing. We have our math shack that I just talked about. We have our in-progress lit and vocab shack, so it kind of looks a little awkward there. And then we have to be determined shack, so I just used a picture of shack until we have a better idea. And then this last fellow here, his name is not Shaq, his name is actually Greg Pollock. He's a product manager in charge of gamification. And so not only does he have a master's thesis in English, he also has a PhD in Call of Duty and Candy Crush.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. So before coming to Shmoop, I made iPhone games. It was super fun. I got pretty good at foosball, but I'd come home at night and talk to my wife. She's a third grade teacher. And what she was doing was just clearly more important than what I was doing. So it's really exciting to be working at Shmoop now. One, to be part of education, but also because I saw how hard teachers work, and to be able to bring what I learned in the gaming world to the task of making teachers' jobs easier so they can do what they do so well, even better. So as a product manager at Shmoop, what I do is try to bring together the great content that Jen and Deb and their teams make with all the data that Dave's team makes available to create the best possible learning environment for your students. One part of this is just making it easy for them to find the resources that they want. That's one of the things VP Zimmer was talking about, is when you give someone the machine, you need to teach them how to use it. And part of that is having a website, having products that are intuitive and easy to navigate so that you can find whatever it is you're looking for. The metaphor I use to think about this is that when I'm trying to eat healthier, and I'm always trying to, it helps to put out a bowl of fruit so that when I'm feeling snacky, I won't go get the Doritos out of the pantry. I'll just eat the banana because it's right there. So it says product manager up there, but I'm kind of just the guy who puts out the bananas. But when you come talk to me in the demo garage, please just call me Greg. Mr. Banana Guy is my father's name. So the second part of making Shmoop a good learning environment is supporting students' motivation to learn, keeping them engaged. And that's where gamification really comes in. We want to help students set goals, provide the resources for them to achieve those goals, and then reward them when they get there. We call this gamification because that loop is the center of what makes games so fun and engaging for us, but it's not unique to games. It's really integral to education and success in all walks of life. So the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have been doing this for decades. Some of you might have some of those badges. My wife does a thing in her classroom where she has a bowl of marbles, and when the students are good, she'll take a few out. When they're not so good, she might put one back in. And then when the bowl is empty, they'll get some sort of reward, like an ice cream party or something fun. She's never said gamification to me, but what she's doing there is a textbook example of how you can use sort of game-like aspects to improve learning outcomes in the classroom. I remember when I was in elementary school, our teacher would play a game called Who Can Be Quiet the Longest. The other kids said it was a trick, but I think they were just mad that I always won. So now that I'm talking to a room of gamification experts, I'm going to tell you about what Shmoop is building to help students set goals, achieve them, and feel good about it. So first, following the examples of the Scouts, as well as plenty of video games, and even educators are already doing this, students will now be able to earn badges on Shmoop by doing exactly what they do right now, by reading learning guides, by doing drills and practice exams and test prep, and watching the videos that Dave has been voicing. So your student might be going along, reading the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn guide, and when they get to the end, they'll earn a badge, and it's a way of telling them, hey, like you've done so much work, you are succeeding so well. And once they've earned all of these, we'll need a place to represent that to the student. So this is where what Dave was talking about as big data comes in. We keep track of what your students are doing all over the site, and then we'll aggregate that into one place to help them put their best Shmoop forward. So this is an early sketch I did of our new profile, where students will be able to see a summary of all the activity they've been doing. This is already where you go to find your passes for test prep and online courses, and now it's also a summary of your success in those products. This is an early example. It's not what it's going to look like in the final form, but it's mocked up to show some of the key functionality, although I did use my real headshot. So first we have a running list of the things that your student has recently been reading. This is based on the theory that if you were reading Act 1 of Hamlet yesterday, pretty good chance you're going to read Act 2 today and Act 3 sometime in the future. So we put it right there. This is the bowl of bananas, so that when your student comes into Shmoop, they have things that are beneficial to them right in front of them at their fingertips. Secondly, I think one of the best motivators is the people around you. That's one of the cool things about social games, is that you can see how other people are doing. And I saw the success of that in my past life. So if your students elect to make their profiles public, which we want to let them do so that they can use it as sort of LinkedIn for high schoolers to show off what they're doing to prospective employers or when applying for internships, or just to see the people around them. So you'd have a list of the people who are in your classrooms. You'd be able to go to their profiles and see the badges they've earned as a way to have friendly competition, or just to learn about the people you're studying with each day. Lastly, we'll make Schmoits more apparent. We've had so many really inspiring success stories from people who use Shmoop about how they've been able to get their students to engage with our products so much by bringing the Schmoits to their attention. And so we just want to make it more apparent where you stand, so that if you want to climb the Schmoits leaderboards, then that's easier for you to do. So lastly, this is something we've got in the works as well, a sort of mobile-first version of our test prep product. And the idea is that there's certain times in life when you have just a few spare minutes, and you can spend that time maybe watching a cat video or playing Candy Crush, but we want Shmoop to be appropriate for those little slices of time as well. And so our new test prep app, the students will load up with a few videos of the subject areas they want to study. They can do this on the bus, come to school, and be ready for the SAT, in theory. So I'm excited to have shown you all the stuff that we're working on at Shmoop, but none of this would be possible without Allison Arunsky, our Director of Accounts. She logs more hours on the road than your average truck driver visiting our schools and districts and getting real feedback that we use in our designs. She's the one who takes our ideas and your ideas and makes them into something great. So please welcome Allison to the stage.
So that was a lot of information. The point is Shmoop has an extensive amount of content written and designed by brilliant people that are passionate, just like you. So I'm the one that's out on the field. I'm the one that's out on the field working with your teachers, administrators, and many of you are familiar in the audience. Thank you so much for coming. I know your time is valuable, and you guys are totally my favorites. Don't tell anybody else. So how do we spread this mission? We work with you and your teachers and you as administrators to find the gaps and make improvements. The world of education is a wonderful space that's never ending, and it's changing. And we, within the Shmoop team, are committed to changing it with you. So that's why we wanted to create this interSECT conference. We want to network with you, you meet each other, and then let's try to make a space that will speak to our students and get them to a better level. Thank you, everybody, for your time.